Tim Roberts, Tom Hitchcock, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Tom. How are you?
I'm very good. I could see, so we're just, I don't know if, well, I know people don't see this before we start the episode as a countdown, five, four, three, two, one.
Yep.
You saw it at three. That's when you look back up again. And then we
Yep.
saw this little movement of glasses. And that's when we know Tim is ready, when those glasses
Yes.
move.
Very much so. Yeah, I'm as blind as a bat without them. So certainly, yeah, we're going to make sure that they're not sliding
That's
down the
the one.
nose.
That's the look. And just so you know, Tim, okay, so a lot of time when I speak to people on here, I don't know them until we're meeting like this for the first time.
Yep.
We do know each other quite well. You are the first episode we've recorded this year. You've
Really?
taken the credit of that. We've
That's
done solo with me talking to myself, which I do a lot of, probably a bit too much. But you're the first unless you're a figment of imagination, we'll find out at
no, no,
the end with the
I'm here.
recording.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to yourself as well. So, how's everything in your world, mate?
Look, things have been. They have actually started off quite busy, quite positive actually in my world. So I am looking to 2026 in a bit of a positive light.
Okay, positive because you there's traction for you. There, you are busy, or that things are starting to pay off from the groundwork that you put in. What's
Yeah.
that?
I think a bit of column A, a bit of column B. So there's been a lot of legwork put into 2025 as a newbie to the specialist disability accommodation space. And yeah, a lot of legwork. And now some partnerships are starting to form, which is really exciting. And we are starting to get some traction and we are starting to move the needle. And I'm learning lots. So I feel like instead of starting from absolute scratch in 2025, not knowing how to spell SDA or what it even meant, I thought it was the Seventh day Adventist Church. Apparently, it's also that. To now having a bit more of an understanding of the space, I feel like I'm in a bit of a better position this year.
Okay, so if we roll a year back, then how do you feel about 2025? In the middle of it, was you pulling your hair out, which obviously we're both part of the BGA, was worth a mention.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, you're talking a tower of transition. Okay,
Mm,
so there's optimism, which the counter to that is a bit of pessimism. There's a bit of struggle,
yep.
and legwork doesn't necessarily mean it's plain easy to do. So, how did you feel mid 2025 then?
Um, I won't swear because this is meant to be professional, but yeah, it was pretty rubbish to be honest. There were certainly parts through the middle of the year that were really, really difficult. I think anybody that you know understands and knows the grind and is working in a system where referrals can be hard to come by or work can be hard to come by. It can be a bit lumpy. You can feel like you're pulling your hair out, figuratively or imaginatively in my case. Um, and still not getting the outcomes. And I guess the question you can sometimes ask is, am I doing something wrong? Am I missing something? And then there's questions, there's doubt, there's all those sort of wonderful things that come to play. So yeah, no, I would have to say that middle of 2025 certainly was feeling a bit down, and it was certainly quite difficult.
How did you? So, for those that are listening that might find themselves in the same situation, or for those outside of the sector that we're both talking about,
Mm.
because it's quite agnostic components there. How did you manage to dissolve those feelings of, "Am I doing something wrong?" How did you counter
Mm.
that?
I feel like saying a joke, but I won't. Look, I think if I'm honest, probably the best way to counter that was to reach out to um, colleagues and others in the industry who I felt were quite honest and real. I had to take a bit of a risk with some of them, where, you tried to be a bit open or share some of your struggles and they were like, no, I'm fine. Everything's great. And you're like, not the right person to talk to. That's not helping. But being able to talk to some key people and go, hey, like, is it me or is this hard? And they'd be like, well, what are you doing? And you'd talk through your processes and they would either give you some feedback on areas that you could tweak a little bit more or encourage you to be maybe a little bit more persistent. But a lot of the time the feedback was, it's a tough industry. it is looking for a needle in a haystack. You are Central West, you know, there's not as many people in the Central West. It is naturally a little bit more difficult, and so actually, you're doing a great job. Keep keep doing what you're doing, and it will come to fruition. And interesting, like Tom and I, we were chatting probably mid, probably a little bit over mid. And I was like, I don't have enough work. Things are really quiet. And, we were looking at other options and other things that could happen. And then literally, I think I came back from 2 weeks of leave and I had four, referrals land in my lap and a partnership, So it's funny how those things can change in a matter of months.
I'm going to take that as a recorded claim that Mr. Purple's a lucky charm.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Take that.
but I think what you actually said something that was quite interesting, and it's something that's thrown around quite cheaply, misunderstood. And there's two components to it. The first part is authenticity. Okay, so I know if I go to speak to someone in a sector and I'm also feeling them out to see if they're the right person to speak to, am I getting the facade? Am I getting the truth? Okay,
Mm.
because I can only really engage with the truth. The facade,
Yep.
if I want the facade, I go to your website.
Yep.
All right. But coupled with it, so authenticity is there. It's almost like it's a sales technique. I'm authentic, buy from me. Okay. But there's perceived authenticity. There's like, I'm being
Mm.
real, but we know that's not real as well. So there's a layer of cynicism. And the,
Yep.
the next level to this, and the way to, I think, to counteract that is vulnerability. Okay. So if you put yourself in a position of risk where this could really backfire, just that little bit I gave you
Yep.
that little bit I gave you could give me that much harm. That's vulnerability, okay? And that's genuine authenticity. And I think what you said you've done there is you put yourself out there, you made yourself vulnerable, not catastrophically vulnerable, but enough to then
Yeah.
determine if someone was being authentic or not.
Correct. No, I think you have to be. I think you pick on a good point. Vulnerability is a key component. I think you have to be wise in that, which is something that you just mentioned. Like, you're not going to go, I'm going to be this vulnerable to get this much gain. That's unwise. But, being able to go, look, actually, if someone went away and said, oh, Tim's struggling getting referrals and, he's worrying about what he's doing, it's not going to blow me up in my professional career, right? But it is enough to demonstrate to the other person that, hey, I am being authentic. I am being real. I am happy to share, some of the challenges that I'm facing. And I think that does demonstrate that authenticity and that realness. And you do build a deeper relationship and you get to know who you can trust and who you can work with. And those where you kind of go, nice to know you, nice to meet you, see you around the traps, but that's probably as far as we're going to go.
And it's interesting. So I reckon it's a good technique to build up those connections, so you know who's your tribe, who is not.
Mm,
But you're also at risk of validating or having some confirmation bias. Well, okay, we're all in the same SHIT together,
yep.
but does that solve my problem? No, it doesn't. It makes me feel a bit better,
Correct.
but it doesn't solve it. So what did you do to maybe solve those issues, to dig yourself out of that
Yeah.
situation?
It's a good point because I do see that a bit actually in the industry, in particular, where we kind of there's a bit of oh woe is me, it's really hard, and everyone's like, yeah, it's really hard. Let's go and you know put on another event where we all get together and have morning tea and talk about how we're going to magically solve the problems, and then we leave it 3 hours, you know, lessened without any real momentum forward. What did I do? Look, I do think that there are some universal truths out there. So where there is an element of you just have to keep putting in the work. And there are some tried and true measures and tried and true practices that you can do. I think there was an element that we knew that the work was going to come and we knew that we were going to get there. And we knew that because if we did the work, it was going to come. And that's quite vague. So what did I do? I knew in my industry, I know that a lot of my work is going to come from people that are, you know, who have major concerns around their functional capacity and the ability for them to do things. They have very severe or significant disabilities. And we know that those individuals typically are connected to hospitals. We know that they're typically connected to specialist support coordinators. We know that they're typically connected to carers and providers who do high care or complex care. So we know that there's some of the key relationships we need to build with. We know that we need to be talking to those people, the councils, all of those people that put those really important infrastructures in place. And that if we could demonstrate that we could be trusted, our viewpoint was that whenever anybody looks for a home, it's a huge deal. Moving house, finding a new place to live, whether it's renting, purchasing, whatever, is massive. So, and that's for me, that's for you, that's for anybody. That is doubly, triply, 1,000 times so for someone who doesn't necessarily have the family supports or the community around them or the financial backups or these other sort of safety nets in play. So for an individual with a significant and or extreme disability, looking for somewhere to live, is a lot more complex and not as straightforward as it is for general population, for lack of a better term. So I realized that we had to be patient and we had to be trusted. And that building that trust takes time because you're dealing with someone's long-term livelihood, the foundation of where they're going to get their supports, where they're going to live their life, where they're going to realize their dreams, where they're going to strive for their hopes and live the life that they hope to live. That's something that I don't think can be rushed, and so I think holding that in my back pocket as a truth was probably helpful because it meant that, yes, I was doing the work, I was building the relationships, there was some seeds being sown, but that was going to still take some time. And I believe that now that we're starting to build some trust and see that we are a safe place, we are considerate and thoughtful and ethical. A lot of that trust building work that's taken 12 months to do and or longer is sort of, there's a foundation there now.
Okay. I think you walked into my trap there, Tim. So, so when I was listening to you, I had my own observations what did and didn't work for you. Okay, I think persistence is one of them that's worked for you. So, you know, every no brings you closer to a yes, and a no can take different shapes
Mm,
and forms. But if it isn't transacted yet, it's still a no. They could
yep.
love what you're doing, but if it hasn't happened, it hasn't happened. Okay. So that only kicks in if you're tenacious and you don't give up, okay, which is what you said you did there. But the trust component's massive, and this comes back to where people are struggling in the sector. So if we trauma bond, we've got a business development mindset. Okay, I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this. Sector's really difficult. I can't get
Yep.
referrals. Da 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 da. That's a lovely chai latte. Okay, yeah, we've been there, done it. And what's really happening, okay, so we know that referrals are not as happening as frequently as they used to. Things have shifted somewhat. So there's a BDM struggle there,
Mm,
okay, which basically means KPIs not being hit, pressures on these people. And then
mm,
the issue is you have with this is these BDMs start to manipulate, influence, and push a referral before its correct time. Okay, so
mm.
you're saying you mentioned hospitals. People don't go to hospitals for out of choice. It happens,
No.
and we need to be reactive at the right time. We can't force them in hospital and what have you. Not force the circumstance. Okay, um, and that's where the trust comes from. So if you've got an employer who's patient and understands the nature of the beast, then you're absolutely right. It will happen when it's ready. Okay. And that's where the trust is earned. But if you'd pushed those and made these happen, make your mind up now, we're better than them, da 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 da, all those things just to hit your KPIs / targets, then the trust has gone out the window.
Well, it's short-term thinking. I
Yes.
think It's that abundant mindset versus a scarcity mindset. It's a, is it based out of fear or is it based out of abundance? Scarcity is fear that there's not enough, fear that there's never going to be enough, fear that there's a scarce resource that we're not going to be able to get the referrals. Therefore, I have to grab and hold on to everything I possibly can at whatever cost your ethical standard lets you grab it from, some more than others. Or you have an abundant mindset, which actually, it's a huge scheme. There's plenty of work, right? And there's work for the right people in the right areas at the right times. And that might mean that we don't grow at 10 times every 12 months for the next 3 years, right? But it might mean that we put the work in and in 5 years' time, we grow by 100 times because we're in the right position, right? Or it might mean we never grow. You never know, right? It's business. But I do think that having that more abundant mindset of, okay, no, there is going to be enough out there. There is going to be enough work. And there's a shift because it means that you shift from thinking short term of crap, I've got to hit my KPI tomorrow. I've got to get the work in. Otherwise, I'm not going to have a job in 3 months, or I'm not going to do this, or we're not going to hit out this target. I think there's a risk that if that's the mindset you play all the time, your relationships become fraught. There's a lot of undermining. There's a lot of competing against one another. There's a lot of I'm better than that person and that person's not as good as this, and it gets quite gossipy. I think that only sets you up for short-term success and long-term failure. Like, to be honest, I think that, you're right. We do need owners that understand the beast and have an understanding of the long-term play. There needs to be accountability. Like if it's 12 months and there's nothing else coming through the door, well, then maybe we need to rethink our strategy. But I do think that there's also the responsibility of those in that BDM space or the referral space or ops space or wherever you find yourself to actually communicate back. One thing I did was I'm like, I need X number of people. Therefore, I know that out of every 100 tours that I do or have every 100 applications, I know that only about 20% of them will end up getting the appropriate type of funding. I know out of that small proportion, even smaller will actually move through into an apartment. And that meant that if I was able to extrapolate that out, I actually needed to have about 1,500 to 2,000 different meetings with different people in order to get the number of people through the door that by the end of the pipeline, I had the referrals I needed. So we extrapolated that. I was able to feed that back to my owners and say, reality is it's not going to happen this year. And we were able to say, this is our target. And we knew that every meeting we had was one step closer and was one less that we had to have. And we learnt from the process. We learnt of where do we need to spend our time and our energy? We kissed a lot of frogs and we hope that some turn into princes. We knock on a lot of doors and hope that one opens. And you find that then you nurture those princes and you find those doors and you keep them open. So yeah, bit of
So
a
there,
process.
you mentioned something there that's quite a big one. Then is you managed upwards correctly.
Yes.
Okay, so a BDM, for example, they will only force an issue, speed up to make things happen with whatever skills they have, if they're feeling the pressure. Okay, like as you said, self-preservation. If I don't do this in 3 months, I don't have a job. My bills are not paid, and then it's understandable. Is it a pressure they're putting themselves? Probably not. It's from the organisation that they're in.
Correct.
So the conversation needs to be had with the owners so they actually genuinely understand the situation they're in. And that's something you've just given a really good example of. And people do need to master the art of managing upwards, because if you can articulate this and then also, as you said, hold yourself accountable with this, what we're going to do, we need to hit this number, I'll do that number, and this maths will kick in, give or take. All right. And then that's justification for being forceful and manipulative is disbanded. It's gone. There's no reason to, because it's just on you.
Yep. And then I think it allows you, like that was a starting point for me, was you've got to manage up, you've got to manage expectations. And I would say that if you're looking at a new role in the industry, that's something you want to chat with straight away. Like I remember one of my favorite bosses I've had, Ian McDonald, who's now at CPA, great bloke. But we went back and forth probably 4 months, 5 months before I said yes to a new role. And, we went back and forth on setting expectations of what we thought, was realistic. You know, Ian brought what the company's hopes and dreams were around budgets and what we were going to achieve and what things were going to look like. And, I was a subject matter expert on the region and the area and the growing of a business in that space. And so I was able to come back and go, oh, that's off. That's a bit of a stretch. That's this. And then we were able to sort of negotiate and go, right, before we even started, you know, what we actually thought was possible. And I think a lot of the time, if you find yourself in a thing where you've got these unrealistic expectations, it's like, well, you do need to manage up. You do need to communicate. You need to demonstrate that you're happy to be held accountable and demonstrate where and how that. And I think come together rather than you v them. You want to be looking at it as a you v rather than the problem being between the two of you. You set the problem out here and you attack it together
Yeah.
as both employer and employed.
Okay. So, Tim, you called yourself an SME there. Okay. So, that's me, subject matter expert. Okay. Before you as an SME, okay, you've got some
Yep.
business acumen now, which is clear to see. All right. Um, who was Tim Roberts in a former life before you become that self-proclaimed SME?
Oh, look, where do you want me to start? I was a student. I was a bit of a prick sometimes. I was not married. I played sport. I partied a bit. I look. There's a lot. Look, I was probably always quite entrepreneurial or quite ambitious. I always had big goals. I did hope one day that I'd play in the Olympics for hockey. I painted I think it was 2016. It was the Rio Olympics. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the math works there. And I painted that on my wall because that was my goal, you know. So I've always been quite ambitious. I was fortunate enough that when I completed a degree in exercise physiology and a master's in clinical rehabilitation, I was able to work as an exercise physiologist in a private clinic with Optimum Health Solutions. Had a great time there, learnt a lot. Shortly after that, I got the opportunity to open up and be a part owner in a branch down in Goulburn, which was crazy at the time. Me and my wife, we were 23. We packed up our little life in Camden and moved to the Southern Highlands to live in a shack as we built a business. And I think that's when I first started losing my hair, because it was early starts and late starts, and you learn quickly the pressures that are on a employer rather than an employee, when you've got to make sure that the rent gets paid and the electricity gets paid and the staff members get paid and the money is coming in and not sitting at 60 days or 90 days overdue or more. So that was me. I did that for a little while before I sold out. I had a child at the same time. I went and worked at a couple of other larger allied health providers doing similar things. So basically starting their business units in the sort of ACT, southern New South Wales space. Took 6 months off to be a stay-at-home dad with my second child, and my wife went back to work. And I started a distillery during that time, which was wild and a hell of a lot of fun. Like, we made our own alcohol and we got to drink a lot and we got to have a lot of fun, me and a couple of mates. And that was, a hell of a time. Got to do some ops work in plan management and work with accountants. Loved that time, but accountants were a different breed of people. And they were very gracious to have a crazy person like me work with them. But yeah, learn a lot about focusing on the finer details and attention to detail, which was certainly one of their strengths and wasn't one of mine. And then some more stints in some allied health space and some leadership roles and an MBA now, which is finished, which is great. 2 more kids. We have 3 boys. Now we're in the SDA space. So wild ride.
You have to move into a boot soon, wouldn't you, if you're not careful?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
your two awards here, one's for drinking and one's for being a prick. Were they the two?
yeah, they're the big ones. Yeah, yeah. No, look, I think it's important to have good people around you. There were certainly times in my leadership experience in my time where I I think you can get caught up. Or talking to me personally, I got caught up. Sometimes you get caught up in the numbers and the results and the outcomes, and you forget about the people. And I think there's also times when you focus all on the people and you forget about the fact that you've got to make a buck at the end of the day. And I think that's a constant struggle, particularly when we work in a really volatile sector. So
Mhm.
I know that there was times where, a good friend of mine, had a bit more experience, came along to me and said, Tim, I'm going to give you some feedback. You're being a bit of a prick and you're being a bit unreliable and you're losing the trust of the team because you're not doing what you said you would do. And you're focusing too much on KPIs and on numbers and on performance, and you're forgetting the people and you're forgetting the why we're doing what we're doing. And that was hard to hear. But it was really valuable. Like, I hope that that was enough to sort of, I think, shift me away from a path that I was heading down where it was very, numbers, numbers, numbers. Some people that I have led in the years would probably say I can still be that way sometimes, particularly if the pressure's on. But I'm certainly working towards trying to find a better balance in that space.
And you can see that you're self-aware. You've had experiences that serve you to this day, and you're probably a good person for people that are aspiring in their career to tap into and to be a mentor. That's for sure. Now, before we wrap up, I can't not bring this up. And I'm going to put the limelight on you to explain this. So both you and I have very little hair on the top of our heads.
Yep.
We're both founding members of the BGA, and there's a
Yep.
calendar that we've done, which actually is your idea, which I ran with. So apologies to everybody else involved with that. But for those, remember, this the nice thing about the podcast, when you come to podcasts, we can be watching this 10 years down the line. Okay, it's
Mm.
evergreen.
And maybe
So
we've been to Turkey in 10 years' time and we've got hair.
the veneers, full pair up here. Um, but assuming this people listen to this in the future, how would you explain what we've done with the bald guys' lights? What is it?
Yeah. Look, it started off with a bit of a joke. For some reason, there's a lot of bald guys that work in the industry we work in, which is the NDIS. And there was a bit of a joke. Tom took a photo, I think, of 4 beautiful, beautiful bald guys and put it on LinkedIn and changed everybody's name just to cause utter confusion and chaos, which it did. And out of that, it was like, hey, why don't we just do a calendar of all the bald guys in the industry? It's a bit of a joke. And then it kind of got some legs, and we were able to sort of gather a bunch of, quite influential bold guys across the sector. And we got together. We had some photos, some probably more candid and crazy than others. There was a mixture of those that were, a bit more on the wild side to those more conservative. But it was a place for everybody. And I think the most important thing was that everybody gave their time. Everyone coughed up the money themselves to fund the calendar, and to put their time and energy, like Tom, you put a hell of a lot of time in organizing it and facilitating it. We had even people that aren't bold yet, like Penn from Able Minds. One day you will be, my friend, as a business owner. One day you will be. But he took photos and he brought his puppy dog down. We had people like Ben who did all of the website and stuff like that free of charge. So we had a landing page, and then everyone else has just spruiked the hell out of it. Hopefully we might be at building bridges. That's a bit of a cheeky throw at our friend Emmanuel and
I'll
all
publish this quickly,
and all
just
of
to
our
see if it
friends
gets.
and all of our friends are building bridges. We love you guys, but the purpose was is we wanted to be able to raise some money, raise some awareness, and give back to a charity in need. And so cheekily, we got involved with Hair Aid, and they're jump in, Tom, if I'm wrong here, but they're a company a charity that does 2 main things. One is they donate their time to cut people's hair that can't afford haircuts, which I think is really beautiful. And then the second thing that they do, which I think is equally cool, is they teach people who don't have the money or the resources to provide for themselves or to be trained. They teach them how to cut hair so that they can actually form micro businesses to be able to cut people's hair and provide an income for them and their family. And I think that's sweet. And it's kind of funny that a bald guys are supporting a hair cutting company or charity, but it's quite fun.
Yeah, the irony is not wasted on them. They're actually booked up to do their version of this podcast pretty soon as well. And I think what I like about what we've done is that I think I've talked about this openly. It's a nice combo between a bit of banter and a bit of goodwill, which
Yep.
no one could argue with either of those two things.
No.
But where we decided to direct any positive outcomes are with the smaller causes, the ones that people haven't heard of.
Yep.
Okay. So there are people having a little joke at our expense of us struggling to grow hair. But there's benefit for those. Now, if we do this for a large organisation, it's going to get lost in, it's going to be white noise. And I love the fact that we can make quite a significant impact
Yep.
outside of any transaction with just eyeballs on
Yeah.
on the charity. I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. No, I think it's great, and looking forward to what us bold guys can do and girls. If there's any bold girls out there that want to get involved, like the BGA, G can stand for girl or guy. So any bold girls out there that want to get involved as well. But yeah, typically we're excited to see what we can do in 2026 and who we can help and how we can give back.
Well, watch this space because I have big plans for this. We've got a meeting booked up for that, and I'm quite excited. But as it stands, this show was about Tim Roberts. So thank you very much for your time, your input,
Thank you.
your conversation, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Hello again, I am Mr. Purple. Thanks again for watching this video. If you like my videos, if you like what we try to do here, please subscribe if you haven't done it already. The other thing that's very popular right now is the t-shirts, the Mr. Purple t-shirts. There's lots of people wearing these at the moment. You can grab yours on our website, copying this link below. So once again, thanks for listening. We love your feedback. Engage with us and speak soon.